Hello, I am Luis Garicano. I'm a professor of economics and a member of the European Parliament, and over the next few weeks I'm going to engage in a series of conversations with top social scientists to think about the long-term economic implications of the coronavirus pandemic. I invite you to come along with me. And today, for our first podcast, we have Luigi Zingales, an Italian from Padoan, a professor of finance at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business, the host of his own podcast called Capitalism, and an expert in the relationship between the state and business, and on what we could call crony capitalism, how business uses the state for their own purposes.
Luigi, we were together colleagues in Chicago, I think something like more than 2 decades ago, maybe better not to remember.
Is that long?
I'm afraid so.
Wow.
And it's a pleasure to have you here in the first episode of this new videocast that I'm going to be running with economists, Capitalism After the Coronavirus. So thanks for being here. And before we talk about the changes in capitalism, I wanted to just briefly touch on the experience of your country. You're Italian, I'm Spanish. Both of our countries seem to be particularly touched by this virus, and one could easily think that it has to do with the peculiarities of Italy and Spain, demographics, and age structure, the family, the extended family with the old people, the high density. Is this the reason? And if so, do you think that economically the impact is also going to be larger on our countries over the medium and longer run?
So I think that the jury is still out of what is the main cause of why our countries have been hit much harder than the others. And I think it's probably a combination of bad luck, certainly the social structure. I look at a statistic or OECD statistics in which most elderly people in Northern Europe live alone, and most elderly people in Italy or Spain live with a family. And I can speak for Italy. They are integral part of the family. Now, I do not have these benefits because my kids grew up in the States, but most Italian families have the grandparents who pick up the kids from school, they deliver, they do what actually the social structure and the state assistance is not doing, because there's not a lot of help, there's not a lot of childcare, etc., and the grandparents substitute. So I think that's a second reason. But there's a third reason that certainly is important for Italy. I would like to know how much is important for Spain, is that Italy went through enormous budget cuts in healthcare. And I have to say, mostly because of European constraints, and mostly done by actually Mario Monti. And it's hard to imagine that these severe cuts have not impact the health situation. And unfortunately, in Italy, we have this expression to say, maybe you have it in Spanish too, when it rains when it's already wet, so that it's kind of bad things pile with each other. And that's the feeling I have about Italy, that Italy is in already very weak economic conditions to begin with. And of course, this issue can only make it worse.
It's true that there has been less investment in healthcare, but it's also true that our way of life is really so different. I mean, if you think about the economic sectors that are going to get hit, I would imagine hotels, restaurants, cafes, all these things that are our way of life, they're probably going to be much less prevalent on not just as an economic, as a social activity over the next months, and I don't know if years. Is tourism as we know it going to come back? That's something that is hard to know at this point, right?
I think tourism will come back. In a sense, I'm looking forward to actually sit in a cafe in Spain with you and drinking actually some good Spanish wine. So I think that there will be a lot of pent-up demand. As soon as this is over, and sooner or later will be over, I think that people will really want to enjoy what I've missed. So I'm not concerned about that.
And coming back to your comment about constraints and European Union. You wrote very recently a very tough editorial in the Financial Times about Europe. Let me read your concluding phrases. You said, the EU is playing with fire. It's Europe's last chance. Either the EU shows itself willing to provide substantial help to member states in trouble, or it has no reasons to exist. Do you really think this is the last chance for Europe?
Oh, absolutely. I think that the tension is really growing, especially in my own country. I think there was a lot of dissatisfaction with Europe before, but now the situation is so grave that if you don't take a fast and bold action, really Italians will reject Europe. And I think that many people think, but there are no alternatives. I think the alternatives do exist. I think Italy can become an ally of China. China will love that, will give a lot of money for that. And I don't think you want to put Italy with a shoulder against the wall.
So this point you raise is really, for me, very new and really pretty shocking. I mean, in the past, we've had Tsipras, we've had Varoufakis, we've had Cameron, all of these leaders who've played a pretty tough game with Europe, and at the end, they didn't really have any bargaining power because they didn't have any alternatives. And now you're telling us you really think it's really a credible threat for Italy to throw itself into the arms of China and somehow make a massive geostrategic shift. Is that really a possibility?
I think it is. I think that you underestimate the impact that China soft power is displaying now. I think they're playing the game. They are playing the game beautifully from their perspective, in the absence of an American leadership and a European leadership. And in the moment in which in Italy people were questioning about the fact that there was no European help, they sent a team of doctors and ventilators and this and that. And even you see at the level of colleagues, I have a lot of Chinese colleagues that go out of the way to help. My parents' generation grew up with the image of the American jeep liberating the country. And I grew up with their image in mind. And so my heart has been with America since I was a little kid, because that was the image of freedom and prosperity. And unfortunately, Trump does not portray that image around the world. And so the new generation is rising with a different image. And for them, China in many, many respects is more similar to Italy than the United States. We are both long-term culture. We both have the same set of value like the family. I think that to some extent is a match made in heaven or made by Marco Polo. It's not a coincidence that this has started a long, long time ago.
This would be a massive defeat for Europe, and I hope, working from the inside of the institutions, I can help prevent that and make Europe actually take the action that it needs to take, and that's what we're doing at the Parliament now. But let me use this segue to talk about the main topic of our conversation today, which is the changes that we expect in the economy as a result of the coronavirus, in the way that capitalism works. And I wanted to start from one change that we have seen. I think there are two main issues that appear in everybody's comments about this. One is the role of the state. We expect a bigger state, and one is the role of globalization. And many people say liberalism has seen its best days. Let me read you a quote from John Gray in the last news statements just a few days ago. He says, "The era of peak globalization is over. An economic system that relied on worldwide production and long supply chains is morphing into one that will be less interconnected. A way of life driven by unceasing mobility is shuddering to a stop. Our lives are going to be more physically constrained and more virtual than they were. A more fragmented world is coming into being that in some ways will be more resilient."